So the desert tank has been invaded by a aquatic plant. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a pest plant, but it is a pest to me in this aspect. In today's video, we're going to be talking more about it. It's also called Utricularia. How do you say it? And that plant's name is Utricularia Gibba. Also called UG for short. But welcome to another video here on this channel. My name is Justin from H2Oplants.com. And like I said, we've been invaded by a plant. Now this plant is actually considered a pest to most aquatic hobbyists, but in the carnivorous plant realm, it's actually highly sought after. So it's a really interesting plant. But Gibba, basically what it is a strand-like plant that is either free-floating or can rest on shallow substrate. And what it is, it's a carnivorous plant that has these little tiny bladders. Now these little tiny bladders have been known in the past to eat young baby fry and shrimp or little microorganisms. Now, I've never personally seen it. A lot of people claim that it's possible, and I do think it's entirely possible for shrimp because I've seen some really tiny fry, and I would think that it would fit in there. However, I've never seen it in person to know for sure, so it's really up for debate. Now, but really you gotta think more of this plant as an aquatic Venus flytrap. It will trap pretty much anything it can fit in its bladders. Now, its bladders are insanely small, so much so that they wouldn't catch adult shrimp or adult fish. Nearly any adult fish would probably be big enough to not be eaten by it. So they're really, really tiny. I would say probably about the size of a pencil tip. They're not much bigger than that. Well, what happened in this tank is we got infested by it. Now, when we set up this tank, I didn't really go through the plants, and I should have. That was the biggest mistake. I broke rule number 1 about introducing new plants. You always go through new plants to look for pests such as bladderwort or pest snails or anything like that that you may not want in the tank. Now, typically I don't have a problem with UG Gibba or bladderwort in this case because I like the plant as a carnivorous plant, and I actually wanted it for my nano carnivorous pond. However, for this tank, I don't want it in there. The main reason being is it just doesn't look good with the scape. It doesn't suit what I needed, and it was unintentionally added. That's really what comes down to it being a pest, is that I didn't intentionally add it, nor does it fit with what I want. It isn't detrimental to other plants, but it can really just kind of take over if left unchecked. If I really wanted to, I could sit here like I have been the last couple weeks, and I could continuously pull out little fragments that I see building up on the plants, but eventually it just gets tiring having to do that every day or every couple days, just because it does grow really quickly, and if you don't really stay on top of it, it can get out of control. Now, Gibba isn't a big problem when it comes to most bigger leaved plants such as Anubis and Java ferns and Amazon swords and stuff like that have really big leaves. It's primarily found on really fine leaved plants. The plant that I came over on was the Rotella Vietnam that we put in here. Now, Rotella Vietnam has this almost like a feathery texture to its leaves. They're really, really small. And that's just a really good place for Gibba to kind of just harbor on the plant as it extends outwards and continues to grow. The real problem with Gibba is there's no natural remedy for getting rid of it. So there is no chemical you can add. There's no fish that really eat it, maybe other than goldfish. And you're really kind of at just the mercy of manual removal until you get it. So I've been trying that for the last couple weeks with no luck, mainly because, like I said, fine leaf plants, it attracts to fine leaf plants like you wouldn't believe. Now, that's not to say that Gibba is a pest plant in general. Now, you could really love the way it looks. It's really a matter of personal preference and a matter of what kind of plants you have in here. If I had bigger leaf plants, I'd probably just go in once a week and remove whatever I could see eventually would disappear. But because I had fine leafed plants, that is not an option. So let's get into what exactly I did to try and rid myself of this problem. So what I had to do is I actually had to go in and tear down the tank completely to try and get rid of it. First things first, I went through the plants and took trimmings or the whole plant that I wanted to keep out of here. Unfortunately, the moss definitely was a no-go. That all went in the trash. Because it was infested with Gibba. It's all entangled in there, and it would just be next to impossible to get it all out. Now, yeah, I could have probably kept some of it if I really wanted to, but I really just wanted to be done with it. Plus, the moss really wasn't fitting with what I wanted the scape to look like, so I chose to just toss all that in general. I also chose to toss most of the rotallas that were in the two corners because all of that was infested with it down at the bottom because it was so thick. So what I did is I just took a couple of trimmings to make sure that it was completely clean and free of any sort of Gibba fragments or the whole plant. So basically when I was removing the plants, each plant I would go through, finally look under the light of the aquarium, in the aquarium water. I would look for any little pieces that I could see, and I would just manually remove those. That whole process just took a ton of time because there's so many stems and they have so many fine leaves. So I did save the Rotalas that were in here originally, all of those, the Gradiola, the Lobelia, and the Starigani repin. I also did not stop with just the plants though. You see, Gibba, like I said, a little fragment can spawn all new plants, so we needed to make sure that we were completely rid of it as much as possible. So every stone had to come out, every stone was cleaned with a toothbrush, and under burning hot water. My hopes is that burning hot water will kill any of that Gibba that was still left on the rocks, if any was. Now I didn't really see any, but at one point throughout the last month I did actually pull a piece that was on the rock off, but I didn't see any when I was cleaning the rocks. But it's just a precautionary thing to really do. And now maybe the overkill moment. I took 2 bottles of H2O2 or hydrogen peroxide, and after I drained the tank all the way down, as much water as I could get out, I dumped both of those bottles in. Now, I've never done this before. It's kind of the nuclear option, but I really want to make sure that I'm rid of this. And I have seen little pieces of bladderwort form all new plants under the substrate. So I knew that was a completely possible thing to happen, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to make sure I get it all unless I do this nuclear option. Now, hydrogen peroxide interacts with plant leaves and actually will destroy whole plant matter if it's allowed to stay on the plant itself. So what I did is I basically drenched the whole tank and let it sit for an hour after I removed everything. Now this did do a lot of things to the tank. For one, any bacteria that was growing in the substrate is no longer alive. It is most certainly dead, and the tank has the possibility to go kind of through a recycling process. Now, I didn't clean the filter out, so the filter still has all its beneficial bacteria, but there was still a lot in the substrate. Not only that, but interesting thing happened with the aqua soil. The hydrogen peroxide made it completely turn almost to dust or little tiny particles. Usually it's in a little tiny ball shape and that degrades over time, but the hydrogen peroxide just disintegrated it all. It was very interesting to watch. A little frightening, but it still works. It's still holding down the plants, and it's still there. What I think happened is it reacted to the balls of aqua soil on a chemical level, and it probably disintegrated some bonds that were holding them together. But all in all, it's still fine, but I may add some more just to kind of reintroduce some more organic material and whatnot. I don't know, we'll see in the future. So after the substrate soaked for an hour with the H2O2 on it, I then drained and filled the tank several times just to kind of eliminate all of that hydrogen peroxide because it was going to be in the water, and if I ran the filter with that in there, it would most certainly destroy the filter as well. It would kill all the bacteria in there. So I really want to make sure I got as much out as possible, but we'll see in a couple weeks if there's any that return. Once all that is done, I then put everything back in the tank. I put all the plants, the rocks, everything back in. Now the rock structure is actually a little bit different. I'm missing one rock. I took it out because I just did a little bit different of a pattern, I think, and I can't figure out where that one went. So whatever, we're rolling with it. I did introduce 2 new plants into this aquarium though, since I removed all the moss. I introduced baby tears or dwarf baby tears. Now this is an extremely hard plant to grow. I want to see if it grows. I also added in some stems of red Pogostemon to help Fury, or more commonly called red downoi. Now this is a super rare plant, goes for about $20 per single stem. So just by putting 2 stems in here, $40 plant pretty much. Now I do know those prices are ridiculous, but that's the going rate on the plant. It's super rare, it's hard to find. And fortunately, I have a bunch of it growing, but it's not available for sale. I'm kind of keeping it all to myself. So this video is not to say that Gibba is essentially a bad aquarium plant, because it isn't really a bad aquarium plant. It's a nice aquarium plant if it's wanted. In this case, it wasn't wanted, so it's deemed as a pest. But it is a very beautiful plant. It produces these beautiful yellow flowers. Really up to you at the end of the day what you deem it is. But now I pass that question off to you. Do you find Gibba as a pest plant, or do you actually like it? Anyway guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to help support these videos, you can visit our website, h2oplants.com, to pick yourself up some plants or rock. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, you can click the circle icon to do so. If you want to check out the very first video on the desert tank, you can click up top. If you want to check out the video on how we did the mountainscape, which is over here, you can click right there. And I will see you guys on the next one.